Shabbat Shalom. Now for those who didn't say anything back, we'll try that again. Shabbat Shalom. I can't help it, every time we read the story of Joseph, I think right away of Donny Osmond's shirtless, the end of Act 1, where there's only a spotlight on him, behind bars singing, "Close every door to me." I know some of you appreciate Broadway, know what I'm talking about. But on a more serious note, I've thought of this story of Joseph differently lately, this Shabbat. Our bar mitzvah taught us beautifully this story of how Joseph ended up in captivity. And still, even in captivity, he looked out for others. And yet somehow, the head steward, Pharaoh's butler, ends up back in Pharaoh's palace, and the parsha ends, "V'lo zachar sar hamashkim et Yosef, v'yishkachehu." Days later, it seems, or weeks later, or months later, Pharaoh's butler doesn't remember Joseph in captivity. He forgets all about him in his most vulnerable state. I think about that, as I've been saying for weeks, these terrible past 2 months for Israelis and for Palestinians. Since October 7th, I've been saying that our tradition teaches us that Pidyon Shevuyim, this obligation to redeem those in captivity, to free those who are being held hostage, the Talmud says is a mitzvah rabbah, is the most important of all of our commandments. That we do whatever we can to free somebody, so much so that to be held in captivity, the Rambam says, it's worse than death itself. God forbid. And I can't help but think of that as we read this morning of how quickly someone held in captivity can be forgotten. How quickly we move on, forget them, forget our own obligation of Pidyon Shevuyim. I think about 2 weeks ago, how during a temporary ceasefire, I would watch the news and hold my breath every day to see women and children being freed as hostages, see Palestinian prisoners being returned, to see those who are held in captivity in Gaza taken from their homes, be freed. And I feel something very different this week as last weekend that temporary ceasefire concluded. And there are no more hostages being freed. Still over 130 in captivity, and I can't help but think of how many innocent lives have been lost this week, and I worry that we forget this obligation that our tradition tells us to do whatever we can to bring those who are held in captivity home safe. Thursday night, on the first night of Hanukkah, in this part of Tel Aviv that's become known as Kikar Chatufim, Hostage Square, where families of Israelis who were abducted, taken hostage on October 7th, have remained the past 2 months lit the Hanukkah, lit the menorah together. An odd sight that in their grief, in their sense where every day they lose a little bit more hope that things will get better, we light the menorah, which is supposed to be this symbol of hope. This symbol of adding light to the darkness. And they did so specifically to remind Prime Minister of Israel, to remind the world to not forget those held in captivity. And then after they lit the Hanukkah, they started chanting, first quietly, and then louder and louder, Achshav, 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 now. I don't know what to do with that. But I know that when we read in our tradition how easy it is to lose sight of that which is most important, to forget our obligation to free those being held hostage. I know how easy it is then to only feel that darkness and not the light of that Hanukkah. Amazingly, Amit Shani, who's 16 years old, who was taken captive from Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7th and released on November 29th, was the one who lit that Hanukkah and said, my one hope, my one ask, my one Nes, Hanukkah miracle, is that now that I am free, others will be freed. And that's my prayer this morning as well. Later this morning, we'll say a prayer that we've begun adding to our service, a prayer that's been said in Judaism since the 9th century. It's been found in the oldest Siddur we've ever found to free those held in captivity. It's shocking in some ways that since then we've been saying this prayer, yearning for humanity to be free. And I pray that those prayers will become reality. I pray that the light of the Hanukkah will illuminate the darkness that we feel. And I pray that, unlike Torah, those held in captivity won't be forgotten. There's power in the menorah. There's power in the idea that we light the shamash first. The shamash, the helper candle, that actually has no ritual significance. When we light that candle, we don't fulfill our obligation of lighting for that night. And yet that candle is used to light the other candles. A single flame is used to light other flames. And in doing so, that first flame's not diminished, but now there's more light in the world. Light increases. So I pray on this Shabbat, during this celebration of Hanukkah, may we do what we can to add more light to the world, to be like that shamash. To not forget those in their state of vulnerability. I pray for peace, for Israelis, for Palestinians, and I pray for a time in which those who yearn to be free will be free. Those held in captivity will not be forgotten. May the lights that we all have and hold within us shine brightly enough to illuminate the darkness that others feel. And may we have the power to make sure others don't forget as well, that others, those who need to be freed, are remembered. We do the work, the world does the necessary work to bring them home.